reminded me it is 12 noon, which is the afternoon. So again, good afternoon, everyone. She also told me not to touch the screen. So it somewhat sounds like my son, don't touch it, don't touch it. So I just thought I'd share that with you all. May I have a motion at this time for approval of the January 13th, 2022 work session minutes?
I'll move approval. Dora?
Excuse me, let me call the meeting to order. I take directions well. The meeting is called to order at this time. Now, may I have a motion for approval of the January 13th, 2022 work session minutes?
You have a motion and a second already up.
Thank you. All in favor? Can I touch it? I could, okay.
You're really high tech, aren't we?
Too high tech.
The motion has passed. At this time, it's very emotional for me, and I know at our very last committee meeting, I asked for a moment of silence in recognition of our former CEO. And this is the first work session and board meeting that we have had, him being present at the very last. So would you all entertain me for a moment of silence at this work session and board meeting, please, in honor of Jeff Parker. Thank you all for that recognition. At this time, under our chair's report, there are a couple of things I'd like to acknowledge. First of all, I would like to acknowledge last Friday, February 4th, which was the birthday of a very effective civil rights, I call her a leader at the time, Rosa Parks, at the time when women stood up for what was right. And also, at acknowledging her birthday, then President Gerald Ford also named it nationally Transit Equity Day. And with that, I want to acknowledge how MARTA participated along with the ATU in making sure that those in the community, specifically at the West End train station, where MARTA allowed the 1953 bus to be there and on view for the general public. And it was so emotional to think of what it must have been like at that time. The signs are still there on the bus. The news media captured it very well, and it made a very important statement that we believe in transit equity. So I'd like to acknowledge that under my chair's report. The other recognition I'd like to give, I was looking for the proper word, is in regards to the Superheroes video. I have received calls from our U.S. senators and our U.S. representatives who were so enthusiastic and admired the video that was presented at the MARTA State report. And I believe we have it showing here. And I especially said to, in talking to Congressman Hank Johnson, who sits on the Federal Transit Board, that his staff is affectionately calling him what we've called him in the video. So he said, thanks for the new nickname. So I wanted to make sure that everyone and those that are viewing via YouTube and other locations can also see how we report it and how we respect those that have fought for us in transit at a national level. Thank you.
In a time when transit was underfunded and overlooked, in a land where both legislation and city streets were gridlocked, transportation more than ever before. A team of heroes emerges, and they're from Georgia? 6 lawmakers, one united front, leading the rest of the country into the future of public transit. Introducing the MARTA superheroes. Reverend Small Starts Warnock single-handedly accomplished transit industry's highest priority, expansion of the Small Starts program so that more projects are eligible and more with more federal money. Senator John It's Electric leads the charge on clean transportation, helping usher in MARTA's 6 electric buses while championing affordable housing, more transit, with the help of Congressman Heavy Rail Johnson, who's the stalwart for extending heavy rail into South DeKalb County, while collaborating with our senators to create more funding sources to keep our buses and trains moving. Congresswoman Nikila Hillary Nectar Williams, who focuses on how reliable transportation can connect communities disrupted by infrastructure projects and improve people's everyday lives. Congresswoman Lucy McBath, whose work on highway bus lanes will how transit will run efficiently in the suburbs. And Congressman David Crescent Scott, who has made his mission to ensure Clayton County enjoys all of the benefits of public transit since joining MARTA in 2014. Powered by grit, optimism, and the unwavering belief that public transportation makes the world a better place. MARTA thanks these superheroes for making sure that public transit stays on the right track.
So thank you so much for allowing us to revisit that video. It has made quite an impression on our national elected officials. As I said, they are affectionately being called the nicknames we have assigned them at this time by their various staffs. So at this point, I'd like to turn the meeting over to our CEO and GM, Mr. Collie Greenwood. Thank you so much for stepping in, and want to acknowledge your dedication to MARTA.
Thank you, Chair Scott. It's a pleasure. Good afternoon, everyone. Just a few brief items from this post. I wanted to talk first about the bus network redesign update. For those that are unfamiliar, MARTA launched the MARTA 2040 Next Gen bus. It was early in 2021, and a series of things have happened since then, and I just wanted to bring the room up to date in terms of what's happening. So if you recall, we want to create a new system of bus routes that better reflects the changes that have been occurring in our region's travel patterns and development. We had a board kickoff in February of 2021, and from there we went into some jurisdictional briefings, technical workshops, stakeholder engagements, stakeholder workshops, and by early November we were into public meetings. We've had outreach in terms of engaging folks for the public meetings and the survey that I'll talk a little bit about later, but those efforts included stakeholder engagement, social media, paid media, local access TV, newspapers, and publications. So a wide effort there in terms of engagement. And currently we are wrapping up said public survey. We're asking MARTA riders whether they prefer the ridership concept or the coverage concept, and those are the two concepts that we had developed in some detail during those technical workshops to give folks an idea of what each concept would actually look like so that they know what they're voting on. The survey is being conducted online and via direct canvassing. I'll say that results today show that we're almost at 6,700 survey responses, 3,500 of them online and 3,100 of them through direct canvass. To date, it appears that we're about 60% of the folks leaning towards the ridership coverage. 30% favoring, the ridership model, 30% favoring coverage model, and 12% right down the middle. So that continues, and the respondents to date represents a nice wide distribution, fair distribution of all incomes and races. We are finishing, however, with a targeted effort on lower income households and people of Asian and Latinx descent to ensure a representative sample. So next steps in this effort are we're going to summarize these survey results sometime in the spring. We will come back to the board to obtain direction to guide our development of the recommended bus network. And then this summer, we'll have more public outreach on what that draft network looks like. All of this poised towards near the end of 2022, beginning the service change modifications. So I just wanted to keep folks posted, letting you know that we'll be back to you this spring with the results of that survey. We took the tack that we weren't going to simply stick to the milestone dates. We were going to make sure that we took the time it required to do the survey, to do the public engagements. We did have, COVID set in with some distancing, and the ability to actually engage directly with folks was challenged. So we did have to put some workarounds in place, but we found it's important to get a nice broad sample of respondents. So we're taking the time it takes to make sure that we're representative of what the public wants to see. So back to you on that in the spring. Next, I wanted to talk about TR4. So again, for those that are unfamiliar, TR4 is a huge investment in our heavy rail system. This is actually, since 2019, we've been going through our TR4 renovation efforts, and that's to go up until 2026. It's the fourth phase of a 36-mile restoration effort. We're expecting, of course, service impacts the customers and the community, and that starts on February 18th this time at 9 p.m., and it'll go until Wednesday, February 23rd. We're doing the Northland Diamond crossover. We'll be working at that 24 hours a day in an effort to expedite and get the job done as quickly as possible. Come February 23rd, we expect that we'll still have 1 or 2 days of single tracking in order to finish the work. But in terms of the impacted stations on that weekend, it'll be Dunwoody, Medical Center, Buckhead, and Lenox. We'll have shuttle buses from station to station, and we'll also have an express shuttle bus option between Dunwoody and Lenox directly. Some of the lessons learned from the last time, and I will say the last time we did this was about a year ago, and it went well. I mean, it was our first time really going into a real customer impact sort of a scenario like that, but it went well. There was a lot of planning that went into it and some good feedback from the public. Having said that, we still took the opportunity to have some lessons learned, and we'll be building on that for this time around. For example, the MARTA Connect link voucher, which is going to be in place, it was $10 at the time. We're allowing up to $15 because we found that was just, it was enough to give people the trip continuity or completion that they wanted. We're also making sure that, as always, we have the mobility paratransit services in place. We'll have station agents, transit ambassadors, and signage at all affected stations. We've had virtual public meetings. We'll have station engagement, targeted neighborhood and community information and email notices. A stakeholder toolkit was emailed to elected officials and businesses in the project area, and we will have extensive announcements and signage in the system. So again, building on those successes, February 16th to 22nd is anticipated to be a very successful event, including midday ambassador shifts, which is something that we hadn't really put a lot of effort into last time. We thought that we had the peaks figured out, but now travel patterns are a little bit different, so we're making sure to add ambassador shifts throughout the course of the day. And as I said, those express shuttle buses should also prove helpful for customers that don't want to travel station to station on the red line. And so that's what's going on in terms of TR4. I also wanted to, actually before I call Manjeet up to talk about Campbellton Road, I wanted to also talk about Transit Equity Day and thank Chair Scott, first of all, for being present during Transit Equity Day. I want to say that That was February 4th, and MARTA considered it a part of our effort to maintain a strong partnership with local ATU 732. Many of our leaders, of course, signed the pledge, the bus pledge, to use buses that day in their travels, and those that know me know that I started my career driving a bus, so I think the importance of being able to add some passion and energy around the importance of the bus always, to me, is an opportunity that I can't let pass by. But when you speak about energy and passion, I want to share this clip and say to you that Chair Scott was an expert on the microphone, and you'll see in the news clip what we're talking about. If we can roll the clip, please.
Celebrated the birthday of Rosa Parks along with Transportation Equity Day. They marched to a bus like the one where Rosa Parks along with Transportation Equity Day. They marched to a bus like the one where Parks helped launch the civil rights movement. Our Valencia Jones reports.
Community advocates marched from the local union 613 to Atlanta's West End MARTA station. They joined MARTA officials and others, remembering Rosa Parks on her birthday and celebrating Transit Equity Day.
This movement has to go on.
The one thing for sure that I want to make sure of is that we have equity in every area where MARTA has the opportunity to service the citizens.
We move this city. We also move the people and the dreams that come with it.
The crowd gathered in front of a bus like the one Parks rode in 1955 when she stood her ground against injustice. Organizers say the fight for transit and worker justice continues.
We say right now, in the face of all injustice, we ain't no ways tired.
This is where Rosa Parks was sitting when she refused to give up her seat, launching a turning point in civil rights history. The bus is a reminder of how far we've come in the fight for civil rights and how far we still have to go. Today, Metro Atlantans reflected on the woman who made sure everyone could sit anywhere on a bus.
Wonderful occasion that the union did a great job in, celebrating Rosa Parks and what she did for the nation.
Just to be a part of something that honors, where we came from and our resilience, it makes me full of gratitude.
Parks died more than 16 years ago, but her brave resistance that sparked a movement lives on. In Atlanta, Valencia Jones, CW 69 News.
Thank you, Chair Scott, for leadership in the boardroom and beyond. Next, I'm going to ask Manjeet Renu to come up and share some words with us about Campbellton Road and just bring an update to that issue.
Thank you, Mr. Greenwood, and good afternoon, Chair and members of the board. So a quick update on the Campbellton Community Investment Corridor, a main street for Southwest Atlanta. So a little bit of background. In 2016, we're all familiar with the MARTA ballot measure when that was approved. In 2019, this board approved a sequencing plan for prioritized projects associated with funding with the MARTA program. In 2020, MARTA and the City of Atlanta entered into an intergovernmental agreement furthering the program. For the Campbellton Community Investment Corridor, the alternatives analysis, which is a critical step in understanding the conditions on the ground and the various alternatives that could solve a identified transportation need. That process began in 2019 and is concluding now with the rollout and eventual adoption, which is the board's decision on the project and what we call a locally preferred alternative. So that's the outcome of an alternatives analysis and the public engagement process. So with that engagement process, it has been extensive over these past 2+ years. It involved a variety of engagement and communications techniques and has yielded some great results. The staff had a productive conversation with Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens yesterday, and we have had previous conversations with the council members that are most representative of that district, and their district aligns with the project corridor. And we will continue to have conversations with the council members in the district involving Campbellton Corridor. Community meetings have been had to roll out the locally preferred alternative draft and to describe what it is about. And it's about the core transit project. We are continuing as staff to develop the features to support that core transit project to make it a truly holistic investment. So this draft locally preferred alternative, it is a center-running BRT with its own fully dedicated lanes almost along the entire corridor. This is the right mode, designed the right way for this corridor, and allows for investing in other vital features to raise up the Campbellton community area by providing access to opportunity centered on the core transit project. It incorporates features that are important, such as first last mile connectivity, so you can get to the BRT safely and comfortably, which you cannot do in that corridor today with its lack of sidewalks and places to safely cross and not have to dodge cars turning in and out of an inordinate number of driveways in that corridor. Other features include green infrastructure to care for our environment, the water quality, and to provide green spaces for the public and the community to enjoy in a place that is underserved with green spaces such as parks. And to provide a foundation for transit-oriented development that is authentic to the community and to further economic development. These are some of the additional features that we're working on to connect with the core transit project. This significant investment would advance equity in the community, and MARTA is committed to advancing equity in partnership with the City of Atlanta. This project has certainly raised important issues about the More MARTA program and historic issues in Atlanta that go beyond the More MARTA program. A conversation about the entire More MARTA program will be helpful. No decisions have been made about rail or BRT elsewhere in the City of Atlanta, as Campbellton is the first one out of the gate to have made it to this milestone of a draft locally preferred alternative. And it is important that this project be the first because of the needs in the corridor, and also because it can move forward now. Cost and funding. More MARTA does not allocate funding by council district. And if it did, it would perpetuate the historic inequities that have long existed in the City of Atlanta. We are still developing a cost estimate together with the City of Atlanta in tandem with finalizing these historic supporting, holistic supporting features of the project surrounding the core transit mode and alignment and stations. And the investment will be significant. Because of MARTA's comprehensive approach to investment and equity, again, I want to reiterate that this is the Campbellton Community Investment Corridor, a main street for Southwest Atlanta. So the upcoming process includes, as I mentioned, continuing to work with City Council members and the Mayor throughout the month of February. Tentative dates for coming before this board are March 2022 for the Planning and Capital Programs Committee to make a recommendation to the full board on the locally preferred alternative, and then tentatively April 2022, the board taking action on the recommended locally preferred alternative. After that, we advance into further developing the project and commencing the federal funding process. For delivery of the project, construction tentative dates are 2025 to commence and 2028 to begin what we as staff call revenue service operations. So in closing, we have an exciting project coming. Be patient and be kind, because the people we serve are counting on us to do right by them.
Thank you, Majid.
Thank you.
And over to you, Madam Chair.
I had a question.
First, I'd like to ask, are there any questions for Majid?
Yes.
Majid, thank you.
He never says
The first question I'd like to ask is to our General Counsel, Mr. Andrews. in the IGA agreement signed in 2020, 2020, was there an exhibit showing the projects that were in there?
There are 3 exhibits attached to that 2020 IGA. Let me list them all off for you.
Exhibit A.
So Exhibit A is the sequencing scenario,
Yes, sir.
and that does list the sequence of the projects that were, basically which goes first to last, essentially.
And in that sequencing, which I think Mr. Renaud spoke to, is Campbellton Road in there?
Yes, sir.
And what is it called?
It's called Campbellton Road LRT.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Renaud. We reached out to the mayor and had a conversation with him, which is consistent with the IGA, is that correct?
We, as a matter of practice, do reach out to the elected officials with our partner jurisdictions, and we have done that with this project.
But does the IGA spell out how a major, or significant change to the project list? Does it spell that out?
Mr. Andrews will address that question.
I'm sorry, could you ask that again?
Yeah, does the IGA, the 2020, November 2020 IGA, maybe in Section 4 and Section 5, discuss the notification of the jurisdictional partner when a significant change occurs?
So under 4, the program governance, it does state that when there is a significant change or impact as defined in paragraph 5, the process, which is to give 14 days notice to the mayor prior to the subcommittee of Atlanta. Now, in paragraph 5, the significant change will, as defined therein, are 3 different items. Change in schedule, as defined as a change in the implementation sequence of one project to the detriment to another, or not consistent with the approved program sequencing plan. A significant budget deviation is defined as an increase or decrease in the cost of a project and/or project contribution from the MARTA sales tax of 10% or more based on the budget established after the completion of a preliminary design, and then beginning in 2025 or sooner in the event of significant financial disruptions at least every 5 years, or as required by FTA or other relevant funding entities to adopt an updated phasing plan, to paraphrase. So a change, so at this time, none of those 3 things have occurred that would require a significant change that meets the definition of a significant program change.
So the news article that was read, that we read about last week, did anybody at the mayor's office know about that news article prior to it being published?
Likely not, because I don't think we knew about it before it was being published. But I just want to make clear that folks understand what we've been doing right now is still the public engagement. In the course of that, there are meetings with the council members and meetings with the mayor's office. That is not what we will eventually owe the mayor an official letter. Once we know that we all have agreement, then we will sit down with the 3 Atlanta board members, make sure this all makes sense to you guys. Then you guys have a discussion with the mayor. This has only happened one time since this IGA has been adopted, and what happened last time is just that. Lots of early discussions, lots of news articles about it, lots of board comment about the sequencing at that time. And when we understood from meetings with the mayor that we had an agreement, then at that time, Mr. Ash wrote a letter to her saying, here's what we intend to do, and we copied the transportation chair and then the rest of the committee members on council. At that point, then, the board meeting was, I think, a couple of weeks out, and individuals had a chance to respond back, council members did, and ask for various things at that point about how the board vote would go in October. But that's the same plan we'll follow now. And, you know, certainly there will be lots more articles, I think, about all of our projects. What folks should understand, and we have to do a better job of making sure that people do, when we're out having these conversations and we say MARTA staff recommends this approach, that's what it is. It's a recommendation of an approach to continue the feedback and the conversation. There's no decision made until this board takes a vote. And we're also not in the business in this process of counting the votes early to know. We want a consensus. We want Atlanta, the council members and the mayor to be happy, and that's what we're working toward.
So I think in the IGA agreement, it says recommended, not what we're going to do, but recommended. But there is a article in the paper, and it has quotes on it. MARTA decried false, irresponsible statements. It says Lewis and council members Marcy Collier Overstreet and Andrea Boone made in a statement released before Tuesday's community meeting. The agency said neither the light rail nor specific amount of money was ever promised for the project.
That's right.
Okay. So.
And Mr. Mullis, a project list with an attached project budget value is not a promise, okay? And from the sequencing document that this board voted on, in response, we all got a letter back from then Transportation Chair Andre Dickens, encouraging us to take a look to make Campbellton first and to do the analysis whether it should be BRT and LRT. I'm happy to share that copy of that letter with this group. And so from the very beginning, from the day this board took the vote, even though the project was called LRT on the project list, it was clear from the very beginning there would be an alternatives analysis to decide how it should go.
I guess what I'm focusing in on is not the technical words, but I'm focusing on being a good jurisdictional partner, and I'm focusing on communicating in the proper manner and not in the press. I'm done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mullis. At this time, we have a question. Ms. Abdul Salam.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Majid, just one thing you said, and I had a little bit of confusion about it, when you said that the Campbellton Road project would be the first. In many previous meetings that we've had in this room and otherwise, they've said that Summerhill was the first. So can you help me understand which is which and what's the difference?
Well, Summerhill is absolutely tracking ahead. So in terms of our, and I thank you for the clarification, in terms of our federal discretionary program involving the capital investment grant program, Campbellton is the first. So that's a good clarification, Chair.
So Summerhill didn't have the capital investment from the federal?
It has Tiger funds. It's
Okay,
a different
Tiger
discretionary funding source.
Yeah, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Snyder.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you for the presentation, Angie. I appreciate that. Couple of questions. One, I wanted to know how the meeting with the mayor went yesterday. What specifically was his reaction, response, discussion about the Campbellton Road project? And secondly, you mentioned that no decision has been made about BRT versus LRT and other corridors. And I've been watching the community discussion about this issue. It's a lot of very heated rhetoric about their perception in the Campbellton Road area that they thought they were getting LRT. Now, I know there's a ongoing conversation about what will happen there, but I am very concerned that if we try to put light rail in any other area and we don't put it there, that's going to be a huge, huge problem. And so to me, I think if we go with, or we propose to go with middle lane, center lane, BRT, that's got to be the standard that we go with everywhere, because the underlying issue isn't purely a public transit issue. It is an equity issue, and they're concerned, they think that they are being treated differently in that area, and historically have been. So as members of the City of Atlanta board members, we have to make sure that that perception is not real. Whether it's, we have to deal with it on a communication standpoint too, but I cannot stand back and allow that to happen myself, because I know what their issues are. I've heard them. They're very, very emotional and adamant about it. And for me to be able to explain it to them, I have to be able to tell them, you're not going to be treated differently than somebody else in another area. It may be more expensive over in another part of the city to do the same project, but we cannot do something different. And so I just want to make that point to you, and I know we're still having the discussion, but if it's open, it has to be the same across the board. But anyway, I just wanted to hear about the mayor's meeting too.
No, I appreciate those comments, and ultimately the decisions about these projects, they're policy decisions. So the staff's role is to provide the best technical work with support of consultants and a process that yields significant and important and broad engagement to help provide the best information we can for this board to make what is a policy decision about a project, its mode, its alignment, its features, all of that. So that it is what you're saying is absolutely appropriate in the purview of this board to do. Staff engages in that process, as I mentioned, and we look at a range of alternatives based on the mode, as well as for federal funding to make sure we look at the range of alternatives and to have a sound National Environmental Policy Act process as well. But absolutely, it's the board's purview. Regarding the meeting with the mayor, I'll describe staff's takeaway from that meeting. I won't speak for the mayor, of course. But the mayor encouraged us to continue the dialogue with the council members and the community as well, and to ensure that we're providing the best project possible, and also emphasized that equity is a key, as you mentioned, a key lens to look at this project as well as the program's projects as well. And our general manager and CEO has had those conversations just yesterday, reaching out with council members about that as well. So it was a good discussion, and there's interest in moving it forward with an eye toward the entire program. And we were sent to go do more homework, and that was appropriate.
Thank you for that.
Thank you. Mr. Worthy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This question for council too, because I don't have the IGA in front of me. It's been a long time since I've read this. Can you tell me where else in the IGA Campbellton Road and/or Summerhill are mentioned in this, if you know,
Yes, sir.
without me reading?
Yes, sir. They are,
in addition to the appendix that Mr. Mullis referenced.
fair enough. So in addition to the exhibit, they're also mentioned in the program goals and purpose of the IGA 2.0, section 2.0, where it states, maintaining an early implementation focus on the Campbellton Road high-capacity corridor, the eastward extension of the existing Atlanta streetcar to the Atlanta Beltline, and northward in the Beltline right-of-way to Ponce, the Summerhill BRT project, transformation of 5 Points, and the westward extension of the existing Atlanta streetcar. So it's the same project. They just happen to be called different things in different places in the agreement.
Okay, that clears up my confusion.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Another one.
Mr. Alam.
Thank you. That raises another question, because the Clayton County appendix, I guess it is, has similar language, and as you know, it's a couple of months ago, we were informed that there would not be a rail system going into Clayton County. So does that also apply?
So for that project, a few months ago, you're correct. Staff and our consultants came to inform that there were significant challenges in advancing commuter rail. and that we needed to add an additional alternative to that project, BRT, to look at how we could have a viable, fundable, operatable project within that corridor. So indeed, we did add BRT to that process, and we're kicking that off again at any moment now in Clayton County along what we're calling the Clayton State Transit Corridor, which roughly parallels State Route 54.
But that's significantly not what the community preferred. So
Well,
is this a pattern? I mean, it looks like a pattern where things are promised and then they're modified without us knowing it and come back and say, well, this is the locally preferred alternative. Who locally preferred it? So I'm just having flashbacks, I guess, of the old bait and switch. I'm just being honest. And now we've got it for a third time. And I think that we need more information. I know the community is clamoring for more information, clarification, whatever you want to call it, but something just does not seem right in any of these deals.
If I may, Madam Chair, just to reemphasize something that Manjeet had said earlier, we are committed to process equity. We heard earlier that the mayor himself is committed to process equity. The process involves, it's iterative, and it involves staff making recommendations. Ultimately, it comes back to the board, and we will continue to ensure that it's difficult to say that we're going to have the exact same result for every project. When you're trying to weave a common thread through all these different jurisdictions, what we can guarantee is equity of process, and then there are decisions that have to be made. When it comes to notifications, we take your point to make sure that folks that are involved in the particular corridors are more aware of the decisions that are being made in other jurisdictions, and I think that will help the perception of equity in terms of, folks knowing that they're not being treated in a vacuum in a way that others wouldn't be treated.
You guys may not get the calls that I get, but that is what the sentiment is, and that's something we want to avoid. And I think clarity is going to be the one thing that can actually do that.
Agreed.
Thank you.
I think we're going to, as a comment, I think we will need to find a way to communicate with our jurisdictions and those of us on the board that represent our jurisdictions, so that when these type of issues or concerns come along, we're prepared, better prepared than we are now, and have the information and the knowledge that we can share with those that we are here to represent. Ms. Snyder? I'm sorry, Ms. Blakely?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Two-part question. So the first is in regards to the cost. So with the LRT versus BRT, I was reading there's like a 60% construction and operation cost savings, right? And so a lot of the rhetoric is, okay, what's happening with that money? What is MARTA doing with that money? Is it being allocated to other preferred projects, or will it be allocated to enhancing, whether it's BRT or LRT along Campbellton Road? So I think we need to be very intentional and clear with, to Melissa's point, it's a project list with a projected value. It's not necessarily written in stone. We need to be very clear that this is how this works. This is, if it's $200,000 savings, okay, this is how we're going to reinvest it in the community. Or if we don't do that, why not? So that's the first. Did you want to say anything to that before I move to the second part?
That's an excellent point, and we are still in the process of fully developing out this locally preferred alternative. So we have a core transit project that we've identified, and now it's about identifying the features to support it and to ensure we have a full community investment corridor. And so we're going to be costing out what those features are, and it's going to be a much bigger number.
Understood, okay. And then the second part of my question speaks to, it piggybacks on the commentary by Mr. Snyder and Ms. Abdul Salam. I was on a meeting this morning, South Fulton Parkway Alliance, and one of the constituents was expressing concern how with what's happened with Clayton County, what's happened with the city of Atlanta, what's historically happened south of I-20. Underserved, neglected, getting the crumbs of every situation. And so the concern this morning was with the two projects that are in South Fulton that are picking up momentum, the Roosevelt Highway 29 project, as well as the South Fulton Parkway project. If this type of bait and switch happens with the city of Atlanta and Clayton County, what's going to happen with our projects? And I told them, I was like, as long as I'm on this board, I will not stop fighting for South Fulton, one. And two, we're going to just have to make a better effort of making sure that people's questions are answered, that they're well informed. If we need to have public meetings and engage people, we need to do that. But again, being clear and consistent and transparent and accountable to making these things happen, I think will go a long way with what we're trying to accomplish, especially in the equity lens, right? You know, we have Sandy Springs, we have North Springs. What have we gotten in South Fulton? A couple of extra buses.
Yeah, I appreciate that concern and the need to communicate well and transparently about this program. I'll again point out for everyone that the Clayton South Lake BRT was the very first since the 1990s that this board directed be advanced into the federal discretionary process through the Capital Investment Grant Program. And the second one, if this board so chooses, once it brings it, we as staff bring it to the committee and then to the board as a whole, would be the second, both of which are in the southern areas of the region that have been experienced historic inequities and disadvantaged conditions. The South Fulton Roosevelt Parkway, a couple weeks ago, I went out there to tour with the Chattahoochee Hills mayor, the area, and really cool area. Now I know where to go mountain bike near where I'm going to be living next month and do some road biking too. So that was good to see that area, but also the potential with the growth that's coming in there, that area, and the importance that transit plays in supporting economic development in an area that hasn't experienced its fair share of the region's economic development, which is how advancing the Clayton South Lake BRT so early in the overall program will help Clayton County realize the benefits of economic development as a permanent infrastructure project of significant value, and the same for Campbellton. If we as a region can come together and focus on the project's benefits and its value to the community so we can move it forward expeditiously, as we would like to get it into the federal program, so it is budgeted in the president's draft budget. And we have an opportunity to move these things forward. So again, I urge everybody to be patient and be kind. Excellence is coming. And I know that we have to do a lot of work to build up trust, and with that comes transparency. I cringe hearing phrases like bait and switch, but I realize as a new resident to the Atlanta region, there's a lot of history here, as there are in every region, and we have work to do to demonstrate that we can deliver equitably and with excellence.
Thank you, Mr. Renew. I actually have a couple of questions as well before we move on. I, too, have been inundated with calls, which I welcome as a community advocate. A couple questions that you may not have the answer to today, but I want to ask the questions, and we'll accept receiving those answers at a later date. First of all, back when the actual BRT/LRT was proposed, what was the projected cost at the time, projected in labor and projected material, the whole cost of the project? And now, today, what would the projected cost be based upon the difference in what it was at the time the project was proposed and what the cost would be today? I would like to see that difference. And a lot of the questions I've received has to do with the fact that the half percent tax was because of, and I heard you say we can't allocate it by council person's district, no matter who it is. But of the projected amount that was to be realized from the 0.5% increase, and based upon the pandemic and the loss of realization of tax dollars, how much of the funds that we assumed we would projected we would receive, have we actually received at this time? And I think there is a difference in that amount, and I think that's very important that we understand where that difference is, what the cost is now, as opposed to what the cost would have been at the time it was projected. Does that make?
Yes, thank you, Chair. We will get that information back to you and the whole of the board.
My very last question, you mentioned that you had a tour of the Chattahoochee area. Have you also toured this area, the Campbellton Road?
Yes, very early on upon my arrival to this region. I believe it was right after the 4th of July. Yes, and that was eye-opening for me and has informed greatly the development of this draft LPA and the features that we're going to be adding to support that core transit project.
Thank you. Are
Madam
there
Chair,
no other questions?
one more question. One more question. Well, statement, actually. Robbie Ash, Board Member Ash, and Board Member Snyder and I have agreed to work together with you and collectively with the staff to kind of bring some fresh eyes and ideas. And the question is, what grants are we seeking from FTA and the nature of those grants for this project and future projects? And have we started brainstorming with our federal delegation on the $200 billion that the Secretary of Transportation has in its discretionary funds?
Thank you for that statement. Thank you, Mr. Renew.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Just a quick
Mayor
clarification question. And it has to do with this locally preferred alternative question in my mind. And I've voted on a few of these locally preferred alternatives over the last few years, and I never really felt like I had a choice. And so my question is, there should be some sort of receipt of some sort of request from the city of Atlanta about what the locally preferred alternative ought to be. And is that required, or what's the process for us deciding as we vote? I know we get the vote on it, I understand that, I'm not that dumb, but I don't understand what part the city of Atlanta is going to play in this, because in the past when I voted on these, I never really felt like I had a choice because I thought that's what the locally preferred people wanted. Can you clarify how that works for me?
Sure. So Mr. Andrews talked about the procedures that are outlined in the intergovernmental agreement. But just to speak more generally about the locally preferred alternative. So with the Clayton Southlake BRT, we had went to the county commission there, and they adopted a resolution in support of a locally preferred alternative. Atlanta's governance structure is different, and there's a procedure in the intergovernmental agreement regarding the process to allow for the board to take action. Those steps have to be taken. Although the board exercises its fully independent judgment, it's independent of the Atlanta city's position, it's independent of staff's recommendation. It is the board's decision. For a project like this, with the investment that's involved and then seeking the federal discretionary funds to pursue it, it is best that our jurisdictional partner be on the same page with us. And if we're not, then that's something the board needs to consider in deciding whether to advance the locally preferred alternative.
Can I ask one more question? Are you aware that the city council on Monday passed a resolution stating their preference?
Yes.
And what was that preference?
I don't have the resolution in front of me, but I'm aware of the resolution.
I think the resolution was for light rail. Is that your understanding, Mr. Snyder?
So he's put me on the spot, so I'm gonna say it like this. I'm a lawyer and I always qualify everything, but I think the way the resolution read was, it was the understanding of the former mayor and the city council that light rail was the proposed mode of transportation in the Campbellton area. And that somehow this new, I guess, recommendation from MARTA's staff is complete, is like a different proposal. So the actual resolution was to say, tell us how the money that was raised for this project is going to be spent, not only in the Campbellton area, but if you're going to use it and reallocate it somewhere else, you got to tell us that. So I think that was the sort of impetus of it. It was really kind of stating that fact, that perception was one thing, but more importantly and more specifically, tell us where this money that we thought was earmarked for this project, if it's not used for light rail, which is like 3 times more expensive than Center Lane BRT, where's the other $200 million going to be spent? So I think that was the point of.
Well, I want to thank Mr. Mullis for calling on you for me, Mr. Snyder.
Chair Scott, if I may.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
If I may.
Yes, please.
I just
Thank
wanted
you.
to follow up on the LPA discussion and Mr. Pond's question that, when dealing with the city of Atlanta, especially in the IGA here, it spells out very clearly that the final decision on the transit mode does rest with MARTA, and consistent with both the law, which is the city's charter, and the structure of their government. The mayor has all the responsibilities of intergovernmental discussions, negotiations, and it's his role. And council can pass resolutions. Unfortunately, they do not amend our IGA. To do so would require a lot more than just a resolution to that effect. I just want everybody to understand that this goes to exactly what Mr. Renew was saying, is that there are ongoing conversations. But really, this falls on the mayor and this board to make the final decision on how this goes.
Thank you. Mr. Durrett, did I see you?
Thank you. I just want to say that what we're experiencing right now is an environment where a lot of heat has been brought to this. And what is needed is a lot of light. And the way that we're going to create that light is through communication to the point where we think we have over-communicated, and involvement of all the stakeholders. And I am convinced that this team is going to be able to do that, and that they've been trying to do that. We just are in an environment where it's very difficult to do what we all want to be doing. So let's focus on providing the light, and the heat will dissipate.
Are we ready to move on? Any other questions? Hearing none. At this time, may I have a motion to go into executive session for purposes of litigation and personnel?
I'll move
So
approval of that.
Second?
Or I'll second it.
Thank you. Show of hands. Thank you. It is done. Hit the gavel. Gavel hit. Good afternoon, everyone. At this time, I would like to call the work session of the February 10th, 2022 back to order. At this time, are there any other matters to come before the work session?
Madam Chair, if I may, just to bring to the attention of the board the information that's included in your agenda packet, just in terms of upcoming events. We have the MARTA Loves Clayton County Customer Appreciation event, 2 committee meetings, a Riders Advisory Council meeting, Board of Directors meeting, the MAC committee meets, and finally, we have an upcoming American Public Transit Association at the Legislative Conference. So that information, the details of those are in your packets.
May I have a motion to adjourn the work session? Raise your hands. Thank you. At this time, I would like to call to order the February 10th, 2022 Board of Directors meeting. Please sign in. The new system does it for you. Thank you. At this time, we will have our public comments. Peter, are there any public comments via email or voicemail?
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry, I gotta put my glasses on. We have 5 emails. The first one is from Carol Holt. Second one is from Jason Lathby. Third one is from Barbara Wright Stevens. Fourth one is from Dr. Ed Williams. And the fifth one is from Stephanie Stinson. They'll all be added to the minutes of the board meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Andrews. At this time, we have with us 2 presenters from public comments. The first is Vincent Fort, whom I affectionately call Senator Fort.
I appreciate that affection. I don't often get it. My name is, how much time do I, 2 minutes? Okay, gotcha. My name is Vincent Fort. I served in the state senate for about 21 years. Some of you may remember, those of you who've been around for a long time, I served on the MARTA Oversight Committee, standing up and fighting for MARTA for many of those 21 years, about 10 or 12 years I was on the MARTA committee. I am here in my capacity as a citizen of Atlanta. I stay 2 blocks off of Campbellton Road. I am not somebody a new urbanist that live in East Atlanta, wherever they live. If there weren't trees, I could see Campbellton Road from my backyard. So my point to you is this, and I was absolutely struck by the fact, Judge Sears, I was struck by the fact of how little some board members during the work session knew about this project. I don't know why that is. It seems as if staff is not fully informing the board about all their machinations. But all I want to say, and if you want a fuller exposition of this, you can go on my Facebook page. I've written an essay, a short essay, exciting reading. Fort for Atlanta is my Facebook page. But what I have to say, among other things, in that essay is that Emory was 9 months in the city limits of Atlanta, and they got on the September 2018 list for an LRT, $350 million. Campbellton Road been in the city a lot longer than that, and now they're getting a bus rail. And I've looked at the pictures. That's not the BRT that I know. I've ridden BRT and LRT in different places around this country. All I'm here to say to you is we want, in this time where we are celebrating transportation equity and raising the voice or the name of Rosa Parks, what I'm asking you is to give the people in Campbellton Road, the people in Southwest Atlanta, give them some kind of equity, give them some kind of justice. Please read my essay. I'm going to add more to that because something's rotten, as I said in my essay on the title. Something's rotten in the cotton.
Thank you, Senator Ford.
You're welcome.
Sherry Williams. Sherry Williams, Georgia Stand Up, and the Campbellton Road Greenbrier residents as an equity consultant.
Hi, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, board members, for being here today. I am Sherry Williams. I'm with Georgia Stand Up, but I also represent the Campbellton Road Greenbrier neighbors. This is my neighborhood. This is my city. Born and raised here, I've lived all over the country. I was in Phoenix when they built the light rail. I worked at the state capitol for the Transportation Committee Chair, Brandon Beach. I know a little bit about transit. I've ridden it all over the country. Chair Scott was right. We need to find ways to communicate. MARTA knows how to communicate, and when they do it right. They did it in November and December of 2021, but why don't they do it all the time? You can ask Melissa Mullinex and some of the other people here. I was on the 2019 MARTA LRT tour where they took a delegation. They spent half a day talking about community engagement. And someone asked, oh my God, you do all of that? How much does it cost? They said $1 million a year. Well, why would you spend $1 million a year doing that? Where do you get the money from? They say, you know what? We don't get as many lawsuits and we don't get work delays. We stay engaged. We go to all of their meetings all the time. They know and trust us, whether we have a project or not. You guys, we know what to do. We just need to do it. That's why there's no trust. So they shared with us best practices. We know how to do best practices. And when you tour the neighborhoods, tour it with the neighborhood leaders. And I want to challenge all the board members. You represent whatever jurisdiction you represent, please visit them on a regular basis so they know who you are and what you do, and you will decrease the amount of confrontation. And my last point is the next time you do a survey in the community, please do it with a third-party organization as not to be accused of misleading or leading the surveyors, the people being surveyed in one direction or the other. Thank you so much for having this time.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. At this time, may I have a motion for approval of the minutes of the January 13, 2022 Board of Directors? Thank you, Mr. Durrett. Do I hear a second? Thank you. Let us vote at this time. The motion has passed. I keep wanting to make a joke about our two friends on the end and their abstentions. Thank you. At this time, we'll have our committee reports. First, Planning and Capital Programs. Mr. Pond.
Madam Chair, the Planning and Capital Programs Committee met on Thursday, January 27th, 2022, and received the following briefings. A, upcoming A&E consultant procurement for design services for the Clayton County Operations and Maintenance Facility, and B, research and analysis ridership report. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you. May I have a motion to accept the report? There- Operations and Safety, Mr. Worthy.
Madam Chair, the Operations and Safety Committee met on Thursday, January 27th, 2022, and approved the following resolutions. A, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of authority-wide landscaping services, IFB B49479. B, resolution authorizing the award of a contract for the procurement of new and remanufactured engine and overhaul repairs, IFB B46989. And C, resolution authorizing a modification in contractual authorization for the payment of lease agreements for radio antenna sites, L40123. Madam Chair, I respectfully request approval of these resolutions.
Second.
Let us vote. Thank you. The resolutions have passed.
The committee received the following briefing. D, key performance indicator for bus operations. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Worthy. Our Business Management Committee, Mr. Frierson.
Madam Chair, the Business Management Committee met on Thursday, January 27th, 2022, and approved the following resolutions. A resolution authorizing the commitment of local funding related certain Atlanta Regional Commission TIP project grant applications. Resolution B, item B, a resolution authorizing the solicitation of proposals for the procurement of investment advisory services, RFP P50072. I request approval of these resolutions.
Second.
Let us vote. The resolutions have passed.
The committee received the following briefing, D&I and EEO. Madam Chair, this concludes my report.
Thank you. Are there any other matters to come before the board? Oh, the briefing. I'm sorry. Who's? Is Manjeet?
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I was immersed in an email there. So this is requesting board authorization via resolution for a solicitation on the procurement process to begin for the 285 top-end BRT. As you recall, back in November, this board authorized entering into an MOU, an intergovernmental agreement, to effect the interjurisdictional work in partnership with the leadership of the ATL, represented by Mr. Tomlinson here. So we can go to the next slide. And as you recall, this is the project area from the H.E. Holmes Station up the 285 and then back down to Indian Creek. And this procurement will allow us to do the visioning and the planning and the public engagement and conceptual engineering necessary to advance this study pursuant to the IGA and the MOU. Next slide, please. And that's the background that I covered. In the interest of time at the late hour, I will move on to the next slide, please. And again, just to reiterate, GDOT is working on the project for the managed lane, so this is a great opportunity to leverage that investment with transit, which is why the parties under the leadership of MARTA and the ATL are going to be working expeditiously together. This procurement process involves some of the parties to those agreements to be a part of the selection process on the consultant professional services to support the effort there. Next slide, please. And we, as staff, recommend approval of the resolution. Happy to answer any questions.
Yes. I think we have a question. No.
On up there in 400, where we are with that. I know we've been, the procurement process, is there anything you can tell us about that?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. We'll have a formal announcement February 22nd of the reprocurement of State Route 400 and the timeline for the 285 express lanes that this resolution deals with. I would add, though, that this proposed resolution and the timeline to do this work is time is of the essence, but there is sufficient time to do the work that is proposed such that this can be integrated nicely into the procurement of the 285 express lanes.
Thank you very much.
Sorry for not answering you directly, but it'll be public on the 22nd.
Mr. Durrett?
I just want to say I'm just thrilled that we're at this point, and I'm looking forward to get going on it. This is fantastic.
Before I call for the vote, I want to mention, because I don't think we actually mentioned the RFP number. It's P 50012. We've had the motion and the second. Let us vote. Thank you all. The resolution has passed. Are there any other matters to come before the board on today? Are there any other matters to come before the board? Are there any comments from the board?
Please let the record reflect that my system didn't let me vote in favor of that resolution, but I cast my vote in the affirmative. Nah.
I was going to say, please let the record
Well,
reflect that
they
we abstained under
so-
protest.
Please note that Mr. Worthy has voted in favor of the resolution. I thought he was. It's
Okay.
you're on there.
Yeah, somebody just added me.
Oh, that's it. Are there any other comments to come before the board on today? Hearing none. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Should I call you Judge?